Over the verdant mountains and through the mist of the tenebrous marsh lies St. Sebastian Manor, 7 years ago inherited by the nephew of Ava St. Sebastian. Her once stately estate had become less and less stately with each passing day under its new owner, Gilderoy St. Sebastian. The title of Count was merely assumed to aid his already puffed-up ego. Gilderoy was a man of leisure who fancied himself an art dealer, another spurious self-afforded title. Gilderoy was inside the study enjoying a smoke through an ivory opera-length cigarette holder. His supple frame leaned heavily against the back of the maroon swivel chair, forcing the mahogany to moan as if it were some inferior cedar. Gilderoy was camouflaged by a persistent plume of smoke and his favorite burgundy smoking jacket, which was the exact same shade as the velvet lining on the seat. Busy perusing the latest issue of the Blue Review, Gilderoy had no care in the world, admiring the miniature pulpy print of de la Mare's newest work, The Song of the Mad Prince. Clive Beecham, Gilderoy's sullen butler, stood in the doorway, breaking through the calming cloud of solitude. Clive was dressed in a musty old tuxedo which strongly resembled an undertaker's garb. He cleared his ancient throat, announcing in the most intelligible voice he could muster, "Caller at the front gate, sir. He seems to require an appraisal. At least, that's what I infer from the large framed canvas he is carrying." Couldn't possibly have chosen a more inopportune time, Gilderoy muttered to himself, loudly crinkling his magazine closed. He exhaled slowly and continued. "Well, as it seems to be a matter of business, I suppose that there's time for a guest. Just make sure you get right on dinner, Beecham," Gilderoy finished. "I'll send him up right away, and start on the pineapple chicken post-haste, Count Gilderoy." "Excellent." Gilderoy's chair shrieked as he spun round to face the window, partially to continue avoiding his mystery guest until it was absolutely necessary, but mostly for the more immediate scenery of the singular lavender flower inside a thin vase filled with an opaque liquid. The plant sprouted feelings of apprehension and guilt. Why had he even looked, unless he was some sort of... the devil of those chaps who fancy abusing themselves called... The internal monologue ceased upon the opening and closing of the door, followed by soft footsteps. "Greetings, Count St. Sebastian. I am Alistair Nesbit. I was a dear friend of your Aunt Ava's," the stranger said. "You may not remember me, since we only met once, and it was in passing." Gilderoy ignored him, still staring transfixedly at the flower. Finally, painstakingly, he rotated his chair to face him. Gilderoy realized that the visitor had inferred correctly. All he knew was that the man looked like a middle-aged Boris Karloff, covered from head to toe in some horrid, archaic garb. He was also, as Clive had mentioned, clutching a rather large canvas, front-end facing his chest, a strange symbol etched on the back. One Gilderoy vaguely recognized, but the memory was too fuzzy to recall. However, once Alistair placed it face down between them on the desk, memory flooded back. He knew exactly where he'd seen the symbol before, and who this man was. "Oh yes, now I recall. You were retained by my dearly departed aunt to paint what would be her first and final portrait. Is this the final product? I must admit that I am surprised it took you so long, but nonetheless, I am more than grateful for your bringing it here. What a fine monument to my wonderful surrogate mother. Something this house requires desperately." Nesbit began to respond, but Gilderoy, seemingly recalling something of the utmost importance, interrupted him. "I must warn you, though, Mr. Nesbit, I am a professional art dealer. While the value of personal sentiment on this specific item may be infinite to me, I cannot in good conscience pay more than it is worth in my world." Alistair politely waited for him to finish, smiling passively, staring at the flower on the windowsill behind Gilderoy. "That was not my intention at all, my humble count. This is a gift that we being your aunt's collective pupils, are obligated to bestow upon her only living descendant. You see, the reason the final product was so tardy is due to the simple fact that it required finishing touches from all of her students and colleagues. Namely, the flower on the vase to her left. He pointed to the identical flower on the sill behind Gilderoy. Ah, you yourself are an admirer. How kismet. It is monkshood, a beautiful purplish flower that when ingested causes several unpleasant symptoms that lead to heart failure. Much like your dear aunt suffered herself. Gilderoy sputtered out smoke when this was said. So beautiful, yet so inconspicuously deadly. Gilderoy was shaken to the bone by these last statements from this mysterious man. This Alistair could not possibly know his secret, let alone deconstruct everything he'd worked so meticulously to build. I had no idea that my aunt had any inclination towards the arts. I assumed that the portrait was merely for vanity's sake. Yes, she was indeed intrigued by all forms of art. I'm sure there's much of your aunt that would surprise even you. Not to say that you didn't know her. Rather that she was a Renaissance woman, from another wonderful time, it seemed. Amen to that. What a fine and unexpected gift this divine painting is along with your company. Come, my new friend, stay for supper, and regale me with tales of my illustrious Aunt Ava. My man, Mr. Beecham, makes a brilliant pineapple chicken dish. As tempting as that sounds, I'm afraid I must decline your offer. There is still much for me to do before the sun sets. Good day, Count St. Sebastian. In a flash, Mr. Nesbit was gone. Seconds later, Gilderoy heard the front door slam, making the man nothing more than a mere memory. Gilderoy was relieved by Alistair's declination to his dinner invitation. The man made him uneasy. Gilderoy was also disconcerted and confused as to what should be done with the grim portrait. He lost himself staring back and forth at the painting in his hands and the flower on the windowsill. Several minutes passed before Clive re-entered the room, this time completely unaware of the transfixed state of the Count.
Dinner is served.
Clive! You scared me. He brought a gift for us. Well, creeps, I know I've been pushing this one on you pretty hard, and I guess I finally made it a lot more accessible than me fucking trying to explain exactly where it is that you can find it. And I hope that thus far you have enjoyed it, because it is very much a piece of myself in the sense that it is the first story that I ever wrote, and I'll give you a little hint, it's not the last story I've ever written. And let's just say I know that because it's already happened. But as I've been saying, I really would like to hear some feedback from you, because I want to know what you think of it, and I want to know what parts you like, what parts you dislike, because as I've been fucking saying, I have finally finished retouching the rest of the story, and there's probably about... I'd probably just give you the first third of the story, and there's another 2/3 left. But I just want to hear what you think of that first third, and like I said, what you liked and what you didn't like. Because I have it all drawn up, and I'm about to pull the trigger and record it over this fucking break that I got for Thanksgiving. And like I said, I just want to know what you creeps think before I unveil the final product on you. Well, as I said, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then go back on our YouTube channel and check out some of our other original stories that we have up on there, such as Percival, Currency Exchange, Murder on the Marsh, and Overnight, of which I'm also very proud of. And like I said, Pernicious Portrait is definitely not the first story. I mean, it's definitely not the last story we're ever going to do, but it was the first, and it always will be the first, and it will always be very special. So, like I said over and over and over again, just let me know what you think. If you could, drop me a line in any way. HorridLore@gmail, Twitter, Instagram. Alright, I'll get out of your ears, creeps.
Stay tuned until Friday with a new story time. Until then, have yourself a happy Thanksgiving.